Good evening, everybody. Once again, it is a Friday evening, 5:30 p.m. in Kuala Lumpur. And this is Sheila Singham on the Sheila Exchange. Thank you for being with us. Today, we are speaking on giving back beyond the season of giving. And I have with me our special guest today, Joycelyn Lee, co-founder of Pit Stop Community Cafe. Joycelyn and I go back a long way. I think I must put that up as a disclaimer. We were journalists together 20 years ago, got up to all sorts of scrapes together, commiserated with each other. She held me up when I felt down. I held her up when she felt down, that sort of thing. We made each other laugh. We can be both hysterically funny and mad and quite annoying to people who are listening in to us. But this is a friendship that goes a long way. So we were journalists together, and then we were at the Sun newspaper, and then we were The Edge together, and then our paths diverged. Joycelyn went into the field of public relations, and which was quite amazing to me, and she did very well because she's sharp shooting, she's tough speaking. Joycelyn is like the durian. She's very sharp and crusty outside, but inside she's, like soft durian fruit, and that's why we've remained friends all this while.
Oi.
Hey, yes. And so to my surprise, she quit her high-flying corporate career to go and start the Pit Stop Community Cafe. And I'm gonna let her tell you how all of this came about. So let's tell our people listening in. Joyce, welcome, first of all. Let's tell everybody how you quit that high-flying corporate career to start Pit Stop Community Cafe. I mean, was it sort of a process where it slowly dawned on you you wanted to do this, or did you just have a sudden epiphany? It's like, you know what, I'm just gonna pack that all up and go and start this. Maybe you can tell us the story.
I think it all started with insomnia. Hi, hello everyone. I think it all started with insomnia. And I think when you're in corporate life, after a while, you start asking yourself, should I be doing this? What is my impact? Who am I doing this for? What am I doing this for? Is money all there is to it? And what is my mark on life, I guess? And it started out as a questions, but as a lot of questions, but honestly, after a while, I just decided to kind of walk away because I didn't like the people that I was working with. I didn't like my bosses. I didn't like myself very much. I didn't like a lot of things. And it comes to a point when you've just kind of had it and you said, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. But I think at the same time, I was watching my mother get a little bit ill. And part of it was also to take some time out and take care of her. And that led me to a lot more questions. And that also led me to talk to cousins and go, okay, they're not the aunts, all the aunts and the great aunts, they're not very young anymore. What happens when, they kick the proverbial bucket and who's going to remember how to cook what and stuff like that? That started me on what I thought was just a simple journey to curate recipes, but it also started me down the road to rediscovering, I guess, rediscovering, I guess you could say the word, my heritage. And I'm Peranakan, and the Peranakans, I come from a very traditional family where, at one point in time, arranged marriages were still like the norm, and yeah. So. Yeah, you don't even go there, right? And after a while, it was just a matter of, okay, where does this road lead us to? The insomnia at that point in time continued. It was a very meandering thing. I think it was a 1 year of soul searching. On top of the curation of recipes, I thought I could turn that into a business. And I did, and I could, but a few other things I think came into play. it was also the realization, because I was walking the streets late at night, and I know some people think, okay, that's not the smartest thing to do, to have.
Let's clarify that, Joycelyn, you were walking on the streets late at night, not walking the streets.
Okay, I was walking on the streets.
And could you put yourself a little further back from the camera? Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
So, you know, it was just a matter of exploring the streets, I think, and talking to people who lived on the streets and realizing, and this was while I was planting trees in derelict areas, you know, just not doing anything, I think, just planting and cooking and thinking or not thinking. And what I also realized at that point in time was there is an underserved, there is a community that is underserved, right? The soup kitchens were doing a really good job giving out food, but then there were other things that were needed. Soap, shampoo, comb, mosquito coils, for instance, right? And I've always more or less looked at underserved niche markets. And this was, in a way, an underserved niche market. So it started there. And then, you know, I started volunteering at one or two other soup kitchens. And again, it's a matter of, okay, you know, how are they doing? How can they do better? How can I do better? How can we make things better? I mean, look, the reason why I jumped from journalism into corporate life and into PR was I looked at PR companies and I looked at PR people at one point in time, and I said, I could do this better. I was stupid enough to say that, right? And so I had to put my money where my mouth was. And that's why I jumped into corporate life, because I thought I could do this better. For a while, I didn't. And for a while, it was very painful. And I remember when you all first heard about that, I think someone fell off the chair laughing. If I recall correctly, yes, someone literally fell off the chair laughing when they heard that I had moved from journalism into PR of all things. And you know, it's not the first time that someone fell off their chair laughing.
I think it's probably because the whole connotation of going into PR and becoming a spin doctor, and you, Joyce, are so straight up, you know, hard speaking that people could not correlate. And I think that they might not have seen that that is precisely what clients needed. Maybe that's exactly what the industry needed. People who come and straight up tell them what needed to be said, instead of just following the directions of the clients, you know, so yeah.
PR doesn't mean you're a yes person. You know, it is about business strategy. At the end of the day, it's not just about, you know, a Samantha Jones throwing parties, right? And I learned a lot from that. And I have my former boss to thank for that, Kukok Ping. But at the same time, also, after a while, it becomes same old, and you start asking yourself. So that's when I started moving again. And honestly, after a while, for me, it was a matter of, okay, what, you know, you look at society. I don't know whether other people have the same thing. You look at society, you look at issues, and you go, and I could solve this. Or I could try and solve this. And when you're a problem solver, all right, you're looking at things, and sometimes it's like a jigsaw puzzle of things, right? How do you put things together to solve issues? And that was also part of the reason. That was also part of the reason why I walked down this particular path. And when we first started the pit stop, when Andrea and I first started the pit stop, we learned a lot. I think the first 6 months. I mean, look, first it was a matter of something as simple as I don't even know anything about professional kitchen layouts. Everything is trial and error, right? But what we knew was this. What we wanted was for people to reclaim their dignity to begin with. Number one, people needed to reclaim their dignity. You might be homeless, you might be down and out, you might be a rough sleeper, but you are a human being. And we wanted to remind people of that. More importantly, we wanted to remind people who were not down and out that there were down and out people who needed a helping hand, who needed to be seen. I mean, how often does one walk down the street and then you see someone sitting by the side, head bent down, and you avert your gaze? How many of us have averted our gazes when we look at someone who's maybe a little bit scruffy even, right? Because you never know, they might come in, ask us for money or something. And sometimes they do.
Touch you.
right? They do, right? And then you can be rude, you can be polite and say no thank you, uncle, auntie, whatever, because sometimes they don't approach you for money, they approach you to sell things, right? And for me, it's a matter of politeness is important. Again, it's part of the heritage. And yes, sometimes I can be very, very rude. You've heard some of my language before. But politeness is important. And if you are first, in your first interface with someone, unless they are rude to you, you have absolutely no justification to be rude to them. So no thank you, auntie, uncle, whatever. But if someone is there, I used to take the extra mile. Are you hungry? Or if someone asks for money, are you hungry? Have you eaten yet? And sometimes instead of giving money, what I do is, okay, you sit down and, I will order food for you. And that actually shocks people sometimes. And that sometimes shocks the people who ask for the money because they don't expect it. And I must say there's something perverse in me sometimes as well that enjoys the shock on their face. It's like, haha, gotcha, right? And all this, I think it coalesced into the need to do something, the need to remind people of their humanity, and not just those who are invisible, not just those who are of KL below, right? But those of us who lead so-called normal or conventional or middle-class lives. How do you call yourself a human being? What sort of human being are you? Do you have any level of humanity? And I think many of us, sometimes we lose touch with that aspect because we're so enclosed in our bubbles of, car, beautiful clothes, whatever basically floats their boat at that point in time. I think it is more a matter of getting in touch with oneself, of being self-aware, and of also realizing, I think, that it's not about you, that you're not the center of the universe. It's about being mindful that there are other universes, and other stars, other beings, circulating around you. So how do you co-live, coexist? How do you show humanity to your other fellow human beings and help remind them? And this, I think, it went on quite a bit, our thinking processes. We looked at other places in the world. We saw that what we didn't realize was we were at the beginning of a global trend. In Milan at that point in time, about 2015, 2016, there's this Michelin star chef, Massimo Bottura. He looked at the waste in food that was at the food expo, and he started a soup kitchen. The only difference was, he's a Michelin star chef and he can get, huge backers and sponsors and other chefs to come in, and they can serve homeless people a three-course meal, right? We can't. But what we do strive to do is, at that point in time, this was pre-COVID, of course, is to ensure that we have, nutritious, home-cooked style kind of meals. And you've seen the meals we've served, the porridge, the tong soi, very nostalgic, very reminiscent, very old school. And we wanted to evoke that sense of family, not just on one side of the table, not just on the side of the table that's being served, but also the service side, i.e. our volunteer side. And I think that's important. And most people ask, why are you doing this? Why are you trying to rescue homeless people? And one of my questions is, are you sure it's homeless people that I'm trying to rescue? It's a lot of thought that went into this. And there is one thing that I need to say. The giving back factor, I would have to correct it a little bit. I don't think of it as giving back. I think of it as investment. Most people think of charity as giving back, and it's not. It's actually investment. It's investment in your community. It's investment in your society. It's investment in, if you have children, the world that you want your children to grow up in. So giving back is not as simple as it sounds. you get it in return as well. You get return on investment. So I see it as investment. And some people say, okay, why are you doing this? Why are you devoting your life to charity? I said, actually, I'm not. I'm investing and I'm looking after my investment. And I know it sounds a bit strange to some people, but it is that really. Okay. So
Right.
yeah, I've rattled on a lot. I'm sure you have questions.
Okay, it's okay. I mean, it gives people a good insight into what you actually do, the philosophy behind what you're doing. And I like the fact, Joyce, that when people look at what you're doing, they think that, oh, it's just one-sided, just going out there and doing this charity and giving to the poor and the homeless. But people don't also realize what you are getting from that as well, what your volunteers get from it as well. So, right, you started off by considering what people needed, the below KL people needed, and by coming up with this outfit, this Pit Stop Community Cafe, to serve them wholesome, good, old-fashioned food, and, you know, sort of putting your heart and soul into the service, serving them with dignity, so to speak. And that was what you're doing, and volunteers came in, and I'm sure, you know, you had people contributing supplies and so on. And then the pandemic hit, and then, you know, everything you were told that you can't serve, restaurants closed, you can't serve. And so there's all these homeless people and, you know, people, or, you know, urban poor, who were coming to you and being fed, and suddenly it all stopped. So what happened? How did you pivot that?
Well, you see, the absolute wonderful thing of not being an NGO, and we're not an NGO, we're not an ROS registered entity. We're actually registered under ROC, yeah? So it's just Andrea and I making the decisions in many ways. I mean, we have our regular volunteer groups, we have our team leads, but at the end of the day, the buck stops with Andrea and I, right? And what we found was, to be honest, okay, you know I love my conspiracy theories. You know I'm a huge zombie apocalypse fan, right? So when the virus first started spreading, when news came out of this new Wuhan virus, we started following the news. And believe it or not, November, December, right, when it was still very, very new, when nobody knew what was happening, Andrea and I had already started stocking up on masks, on gloves. We hadn't gotten into the PPE stage yet, but, you know, mask, gloves, any hand sanitizer that we can get. You know, initially it was like, okay, must go buy Dettol. Then we realized something as small as Dettol is antibacterial, not antiviral. So we went for bleach, right? We still have a buttload of bleach, honestly. We use a lot of it, but we started stocking up then. And then I was like, oh, okay, we have enough. But here's the thing, right? I might be the paranoid one, but Andrea was even more paranoid than I was. And she says, no, we don't have enough. We don't have enough masks. We don't have enough gloves. We don't have enough. And we continued stocking up. And you know what? When MCO hit on March 16, we realized we didn't have enough. We had started stocking up on, and we had started calling for canned food and everything else, because one, again, previously, you know what I used to do as well. I used to trend spot. And this was not a good trend, but it was a trend. I used to trend spot. And one of the trends that we saw was food issues, right? So we started stocking up on canned food. However, again, we realized not enough. And we were preparing ourselves from December onwards. We had 3 months jump on a lot of people, and it was still not enough. But when MCO hit, I think for us, it was, one was the lack of clarity on the government side. We don't blame them, because everybody was dealing with this very new thing. We just had to move as fast as we could. And make sure that food still got out there. And there were a lot of ways that we utilized. And at some point, we couldn't serve anymore because our shutters had to come down. We continued cooking, but it went to homeless shelters. It went to orphanages. It went to other drop-in areas where people could get food. People on the street could get food. So we found outlets. We found loopholes. We found whatever it is, you know, that
distribution points,
whatever we could do to make sure that food got out there. It might not be out from our doors, but it got out there. And then at the same time, what we realized was, at that point in time, there was a huge outcry about, migrants and all that, and, refugee communities being locked down and they're not having enough food. And that was when we started calling for more food. That was earlier on, right? We assisted in the food collection and distribution with the refugee and aid organizations. But then, more organizations, as we got more food, more organizations came knocking on our door, and we realized that these were residents associations of PPRs, low-cost housing. We realized that these were orphanages, all folks' homes, because donors were not walking in to drop in food, right? And we were like, okay, how bad is it, right? And one orphanage basically said, we have rice. And I said, yes, okay, what else do you have, right? So that sent us on another round of food collection and everything else. And all this time, collecting masks and gloves and all that to be sent out to these organizations, to be distributed to our street clients. We were very fortunate that, we had a lot of Malaysians behind us, supporting us, watching us. And it feels good to know that there are Malaysians out there who care. And so, yes, it was very challenging, I must say, keeping afloat at one point in time. But then, you have someone writing in over email saying, I don't have much, I can only contribute, 100 ringgit a month. But it comes in, right? And then we have this contributor who sends in email. What he does is he banks in his 10 ringgit every week. And then he will take a snapshot of the cash slip, and then he will send an email with a picture of the cash slip saying, this is my contribution for. I mean, that's so sweet, right? That's really, really sweet. And we have, little stories like that. And so that's why we decided to highlight that in stories from the pit stop. And that's why we have the occasional stories from the pit stop on our Facebook page, highlighting these stories, because the stories are not just about, oh, you poor thing. The stories are about, I think, for lack of a better phrase, the human spirit, or the rise of the human spirit. And if nothing else, right, the one good thing that has come out of this pandemic is to see people rising up, helping other people. I think in the first few months, you could see it, hence the rakyat jaga rakyat, kita jaga kita and all that. But I think sometimes it got a little bit twisted, and we won't go into that area because, that one will require the use of a lot of bad words, but we won't go there.
We won't.
Yeah, all right. But I think as we went along, a lot of organizations that first rose up to provide food and food packs to especially B40 families, hungry families, suffered donor fatigue to begin with. Yeah, number one, suffered donor fatigue. Two, because they didn't have a track record. You start fast, you're the hare in the race, right? And you think you come to the finish line. But here's the thing, we didn't think that the MCO was going to be over in 2 weeks or 2 months or 3 months or 4 months. But a lot of people, because they were like, oh, okay, people need help, and boom, your funds are done. That's it. So we started out of the gate actually quite slowly and cautiously, because to not put it very nicely, I guess, we were waiting to see how many people would exhaust themselves and how fast they would be exhausted, because we knew we were playing the long game. It was a marathon, it's not a sprint. And we were correct. And there have been groups that have fallen by the wayside, but there have been other groups that have risen, right? And again, the strength of the human spirit, it is amazing. Normal people, ordinary people helping other people. And I mean, if you take a look at some of the bigger groups now, there have been more volunteers who have joined them. There have been more people who have helped them. It's actually quite amazing. But have people been negatively impacted? Tremendously, horribly. We've known people who've passed away. We're very, 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 very cautious, because we cannot afford to have anything happen at the pit stop. But We have had to pivot so many times. We literally fly by the seat of our pants, and the seats of our pants are getting very worn. Yeah.
Which actually brings me to the next question is, as you say, that it has impacted people. I like your use of the word, your clients, your street clients. Now, you're very close to the ground right there. You're not only just doing things directly for your street clients, you're also coordinating and facilitating other organizations and entities that, you know, want to contribute and so on. So you really know what's happening at the ground level, Joyce.
Too much.
Yes, I know, and I can tell sometimes how it really can be a drain on your spirit. But the question I want to ask you is, I mean, as you said earlier, many of us are cocooned in our bubble. What is the reality of the situation there and KL under, you know, that we need to be knowing about now?
Here's the thing, right? I think UNICEF and the UN Food Program put out a report called Families on the Edge several months ago, detailing the challenges that families in the B40 face. I can tell you this based on the anecdotal data that we have, and we do collect data, yeah, but we're not a UN agency, so we cannot, you know, fact check everything. Based on reading, having read their report, and based on what we know, what we've seen, it's actually very much worse out there. Let me tell you a story, okay? People who think that they have not been impacted are impacted. There was this lady, I think in March, and she's a single mother, you know, her sister had just passed away, so she's actually adopted her nephew who's in his teens and had learning disabilities because her brother-in-law was in depression and couldn't take care of him. Her father had cancer and was in hospital. So this was a lady who already had issues, and she was living in low-cost housing area, right? But she had a job. Also, she thought. And she thought, okay, I will have a salary, right? And she was working with this tech company. So going into the MCO, you think you have a job. At the end of March, the company said, okay, we're slashing everybody's salaries by 30%. Now, this lady was a single mother living in low-cost area with children of her own who had taken on a learning disabilities child, yeah? And her salary is being slashed 30%, right? And she's taking care of her father who was in hospital. So you really think, oh my God, right? Even in normal conditions, ... And then end of April rolls around and the company sends out a company-wide email saying, we're closing down. So suddenly she has no job, not even 30% of the salary, not even the 70% of the salary. Now, you're already living from paycheck to paycheck. What next? What next? And technically, you're not one of the B40 because you had a job going into the MCO. And it was households like that from April, May, end of April, from May, June, July, even now to a certain extent, that we are assisting, right? Less now. We were, at one point in time, we were going for, I think, 1,000. We were averaging a couple of hundred care packs to families a week. Right, it's a lot less now because we're focusing on organizations. I think when it comes to families, there are a lot of grassroots organizations now that, you know, can reach out directly to families, and there are a lot of what we call gerobot rezeki places, you know, little pantries that they can go and pick up. But there are a lot of orphanages, old folks' homes where they have no idea where they're going to get, you know, their next bag of rice from, or, you know, sometimes you think the organization is doing okay outside, but because of the media ink that they have, because of the so-called exposure that they have, but they're actually not doing so good, you know, because their sponsors have pulled out. We had one fairly large organization, a children's orphanage. One of their sponsors pulled out just a few months ago. Why? Because, you know, the company was shutting down operations in KL. And that meant they couldn't pay their rent for one of the children's houses. That's saying a lot, you know? So what we do is we rescue food, we fundraise, we get food, we get people to buy food, and then we send out this food, because what they save in food cost, they can put towards rent, they can put towards utilities. Unfortunately, TNB still does not take, well, they don't take rescued food as, payment lah. So unfortunately, yeah. So what we save in food costs for them, they can put in rental and they can put in utilities and keep, at the very least, their noses above water until things get better. And when will things get better, Sheila? We're talking at least a year, if not two.
Yeah, I would imagine so. And it's, I think a lot of us who are in our bubble don't really know the dire situation facing.
So if they've still got their jobs, they can complain about being at home. They can complain about, and they can dress up and be at home or whatever it is. But the reality is this, right?
They have a home.
You have a roof over your head, number one. You can call Grab and food shows up. Now, what if your food doesn't show up?
What if you don't have the means to call Grab? What if you don't know where to go for your food? Yeah.
And we have had that before. One of our later beneficiaries, one of our newer beneficiaries, actually, we just onboarded them, I think in mid-November, is a house with 50 plus children. They haven't paid their rent in 3 months because what they did was they tried to be self-sustainable before that, and they had a lorry, a secondhand truck that someone had donated to them. They go around, they collect recyclables, and that's how they make ends meet, or used to make ends meet, by selling recyclables so that they can pay their rent. But now, I mean, they couldn't go out, right? So they couldn't make their rent. And that was pretty dire. I mean, the house mother who came to talk to us at one point in time, when we were asking certain questions, she couldn't look at us. And when we interview a potential beneficiary, it is when we do our due diligence, and one of them is an interview. Body language is very important, as you know. Yeah, I read body language as well. Body language is very important. Now, when you cannot meet my eyes, it is either because you cannot be bothered to, it is because you're not interested, or it is because you're too ashamed to admit that you cannot cope. And then we said, okay, look, we will give you this amount of food every 2 weeks. The relief on her face was momentous. I don't think she realized at that point in time we were actually going to give her food like immediately, right? So it's actually, I think it can be very scary for some people out there. And these are just organizations we're talking about. We're not talking about individuals yet. And on the individual side, there are a lot of stories, And we hear a lot of these stories, and we see a lot of these stories because they're not stories to us at the pit stop. You know, these are actually real life people.
I think the listeners out there, whoever is listening out there, Joyce, I think probably what you said about, humanity coming to the fore, the human spirit rising. Many people look at this as the season of giving, and some people think like, I'm just going to cook enough food, like 100 packs of this, and go and give it to the
Don't do that.
Yes, please tell us. Please tell us, because you've told me this many times.
Don't be a randomer. Don't waste food. Okay, if you have absolutely no idea where to go, don't go out and just say, I'm going to cook and give it out, okay? Because you don't even know. I mean, no insult to anybody's kitchens or anything like that, right? But the thing is, what time are you going to cook your food? What time are you going to distribute or serve your food, right? Do you have protective gear? If you're insisting on going out there, are you going to mask up and then serve the food, and glove up and then serve the food? How are you going to enforce crowd control? All these questions, and I'm just throwing random questions, right? You go out there and you say, okay, I'm going to give 100 packs of food. Where are you going to go? Who are you going to give it to? How are you going to enforce crowd control when they descend on you like, a bunch of zombies, hungry zombies? How are you going to maintain social distance? How are you going to make sure that you are not that you don't catch anything, right? How do you know your food is healthy for your street clients? So many questions. So don't do the homeless people thing. Here's the thing: if you want, go look for an orphanage and say, hey, it's Christmas. what's your TNB bill like? What's your water bill like? You want to contribute? You want to give someone a little bit of breathing space? Go and ask a home, what's your December bill like? You know, how much is your rent? Can I contribute half of it? Because let's say, right, even if you buy food and you pack 100 packs of food, let's say you're spending like 5 ringgit, right? That's 500 ringgit. Or if you can spare 500 ringgit, 300 ringgit, however much, right? Go and pay someone's TNB bill. Go and pay someone's water bill. Go and pay an orphanages. Call them up and say, hey, you know, what sort of food you need? Don't just descend on them and say, here's 10 bags of rice, right? What are they going to eat the rice with? Be mindful, you know, don't assume that you know everything.
So it's not about giving what we want to give, it's about giving what they need.
Yes. And I think a lot of people don't realize that, because I doing charity, ma, you take what I give.
Yeah, that's terrible.
Absolute
that's
bollocks.
A terrible attitude. Yeah. It's okay, Joycelyn. I mean, no, that's a terrible attitude. I think that, as you said earlier, what you said struck me. The street clients have got dignity. I mean, you know, just the dignity doesn't come from a roof over your head and a corporate job and money in the bank, you know. So I think treating them with dignity means finding out what they really need as well. And, you know, you have spoken to me in the past that people have just come out and randomly go around distributing food, and then the same organizations are randomly distributing food to the same groups of people, and they're getting like, you know, double the amount, triple the portion of lunch today, and then for the next 3 days there's no food, you know, and they can't keep the lunch, they don't have refrigerators, and so what happens, it goes to waste, and that's an absolute waste. So how then can people contribute? Let's say they don't know where to go. A lot of people, so you're there and you know all the different organizations, and of course people have been doing it on a regular basis who are maybe volunteers or tied in with organizations like yours and others. They kind of know where to go and what to do. What about the people out there who want to do something, Joyce, but don't know where to go and what to do?
Well, okay.
Could they come to, you know, Pit Stop Community Cafe? Could they come to your outfit and say, look, what do you need?
Not physically. Not physically.
No, not physically.
Not physically, because we won't let them in, right?
So how can they get in touch with you then, Joyce? Is there an email?
Facebook, Facebook messages or email us at info@pitstopcafe.kl.com, right? I can share the Facebook page, or just go look for us under Pit Stop Community Cafe. Write to us and say, hey, how can I help, right? And if you are very specific about a certain thing, like for instance, I want to help an orphanage, right? Tell me how you want to help that orphanage, and I'll point you to the right orphanage. Or, you know, if you say, I want to help a soup kitchen, I want to volunteer at the soup kitchen, I will tell you right now, most places currently do not take new or untested volunteers, for the very simple reason, we don't know where you've been.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me illustrate something. The Pit Stop serves and supports currently, I think, over 20 organizations, taking care of anywhere from 20% to 70% of their food supplies every 2 weeks. Yeah, that's a lot. Okay. And yes, it's a drain. And yes, at some point I will sit down with you and bang my head against the wall and you can counsel me. But that is what we have at the moment. 20 over organizations on our list that get food from us, 20 to 70% of their food needs. If you want to help in any way, or if you want to give back, write to us and say, okay, I want to help an orphanage, or I want to do this, or, you know, then talk to us. But we're not going to have any new volunteers, not for now, for the simple reason, like I said, we have 22 organizations. If at any point in time something goes really, really wrong, right, that means there will be 20 over organizations without 20 to 70% of their food needs that they will not be able to get. That's number one. Number two, we work with, you know, the likes of Pertiwi and Kachara soup kitchens and food banks. Now, if anything happens to us, they will go into lockdown too. You see the potential insanity?
Yes. So what you're saying is you will not accept new volunteers physically who want to show up and, you know, do good. But what you are accepting now is those who do want to contribute in some way or other
Offers for help,
towards,
yes.
towards all these organizations to which you are contributing food and providing food, that we can come on board and tell you what we need, ask what you need, and you can tell us, and then we can, and do we just drop it off directly at those orphanages?
Okay, so let me give you a few ways. Yeah, one, write into us and say, this is what I would like to do, and we will fit you right
so
into
we
it.
write into Pit Stop Community Cafe on Messenger.
Yes, yes,
right.
And I will answer. I answer almost every message personally. Sometimes it might take a while, maybe a day, but I do get back to them. That's number one. Write into us and tell us what you want to do. That's number one. Now, number two is this. Contribute cash. Yes, you can find our bank account, but you can also contribute cash in a very simple way. Call up if you have already got an orphanage in mind or an organization in mind, give them a call and say, hey, you know, how much is your TNB bill? Hasn't been paid, right? Give me your TNB bill account number. You don't even need to give them the cash directly. Ask for their TNB account number and bank it in. And if enough people bank it in, they won't have to, you know, worry about the lights being cut off or gas being cut off or whatever it is for the next few months. Even if 2 or 3 people say, okay, I'm going to put in like 300 ringgit for you. So what if, you know, you think you're paying December bill, but they've also got January bill paid already. That's one less thing they have to worry about, and they have a bit of a breathing space, a bit of a buffer zone. So if you have an organization in mind, call that organization up and say, okay, what's your TNB bill account number? Or what's your water account number? You know, or your IWK account number. All right, ask and just pay. They don't need to know who it's coming from unless you need them to know who it's coming from.
Not necessary.
Yeah? It's trust me, it's necessary to some people.
Some people want the accolades for giving.
Yes, so you can do that. 3, if you want, go shopping for us, right? Go shopping for us. You know, go look at what's that? Not Supply Bunny, Tesco, Supply Bunny, Happy Fresh, all these. Go shopping for us, okay? Bear in mind this, okay? If you're sending us like 2 cans of sardines, I'm going to scratch my head, look at the 2 cans of sardines and go, okay, what do I do with this? Okay, but if you want to send us, say, a carton of, say, ayam brand sardines, or you want to send us a carton of, you know, 1 liter milk or whatever it is, bottles, UHT. If you think that, you know, you want to contribute, go shopping for us. The Pit Stop's address is 101 Jalan Tun HS Lee, 51,000 KL.
101 Jalan Tun HS Lee. Right?
Yes.
I'll repeat that, 101 Jalan Tun HS Lee, and you can buy these, and preferably, I'm sure, would you say you prefer the dried goods and canned goods? Or, I mean, what if someone comes and drops 20 chickens on your doorstep?
I think they should message us first before they
drop. Not live ones, Joyce, not live ones.
Ideally, you know? Not live ones, but yes, you know, if they want to contribute that kind of food, write into us and say, hey, would you like this? And chances are we would say yes. Protein is so precious. Protein is so precious. If someone says, hey, I've contacted a wholesaler, you know, can I have your phone number? The wholesaler is coming, you know, with this amount of chicken. We will say, yes, okay. You know, that is great, because protein is very important. Man does not live on rice alone.
True, and when you're speaking about protein, any restrictions? I mean, because you've got like people
no
who
pork,
don't
no
eat.
beef.
No pork, no beef. Okay, great.
Yes, no pork, no beef, because you know we serve everyone.
Okay,
right?
So chicken, fish, vegetables, and you know things like onions and sauces and milk and sardines and things. Protein.
Yes, protein. Children's milk powder, that would come in good use. So these are some of the things we're looking at. Say sardines, for instance. Yeah, we're looking at milk powder, right? Milk powder is good because it keeps, and it's less heavy volume wise. Yeah. We are looking at, say, for instance, baked beans. We're looking at canned soup even, right? I mean, let's think of it this way, right? Who hasn't really grown up with a can of Campbell soup?
That's true.
Right? what warms your heart more than, like, you know, I mean, if nothing else, a bit of bread, a bit of soup, and that's that, right? Ideally, no instant noodles. I know some people like to give instant noodles, but I'll tell you why I'm not interested in instant noodles. One, aside from empty calories, one. Two is storage. It's very light, but it takes up a lot of space, right? I would rather have things with volume, you know, with weight, because it would feed people more. Honestly, it would feed people more, right? If we're looking at, for instance, milk, non-dairy products, soy milk, for instance, right? At one point in time, we were actually giving out V-soy because a lot of Asians are lactose intolerant, right? So we had this amazing sponsor who gave us cartons and cartons and cartons of V-soy, and that went down a treat because soy milk, it's very healthy, not as sweet, and very dense, amazing protein. So you're looking at that. Please don't say, you know, what happens to vegetarians. If you're poor and if you're on the street, you have no option to be a vegetarian, essentially, right? Baked beans are good for orphanages, old folks' homes, you know, mostly, and this is going to go down to race lines a bit, mostly Chinese and Indian homes, because, you know, on the Malay homes, aside from eating it with eggs, they're not too sure sometimes how to treat it. So different races, different cultures, they do have different taste preferences as well, of course, as you know, right? So yeah, even for instance, like curry powder, right? Chili powder, curry powder, that, oh yeah, that one goes down a treat as well. If anyone works in a food and beverage company, or in a food production company, if they have anything that's near expiry, and if it's under 6 months, you're going to have to drag it off the retail shelves anyway, yeah, your expiry date. So anyone who has stuff that's 1 to 6 months, whether it's cookies, biscuits, canned food, we take a lot of stuff, actually. We take some very strange things as well that people don't think we take. Like, for instance, tomato juice. I just had a major delivery of really good tomato juice. And amazingly, some of the orphanages were like, oh my God, what a luxury, can we have some? Right? So you never know.
Thank you for that, Joyce. I mean, that's really enlightening and really good to know that for I think what you have pointed out in this conversation, Joyce, is that if you're going, I mean, this is just coming home to me. If you're going to give, don't just give what you want to give and go and give randomly some Maggie mee and some stuff that you feel that people need. I think you need to treat these homeless with dignity. What you were saying is that protein is important, nutritious food is important.
Yes.
God knows they get little enough food. So if whatever you're going to give them, let's make it meaningful and nutritious and healthy even. I mean, Maggie mee definitely not healthy, like, you know. I do eat it on occasion when I feel like perversely being unhealthy. Yeah,
because it's, for us, it's a guilty
comfort
pleasure.
food.
It's guilty pleasure food as well. Yes, right.
Yeah.
And sometimes we're just lazy.
Yeah, correct. Sometimes you just want to go down memory, because I remember my uni days, that was all we could cook in a can, you know, with a heater, Maggie mee. So yeah, you do that for nostalgic reasons. And occasionally, I suppose it's okay for these kids or, you know, people in homes to have some of that. But when you're going to give, I always believe that you've got to give something. And when I give gifts, I give people what I like. So when you're going to give people food, give them what you would eat, not rubbish that you wouldn't eat, you know.
I would also say this, right? I would ask this: would you serve it to your family?
Good point.
If you're not going to serve it to your family, if you think that the quality is below what you would serve your family, don't even go there.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I totally agree with you there, Joyce. Thank you so much. Thank you for this really, really enlightening, you know, discourse that people out there, I think it's not that a lot of people don't want to give. I think sometimes they don't know where to give, and you have kind of pointed us in the right direction. So for those of you, it's not just about giving during the season of giving, it's about continuously giving. Is what you've heard Joycelyn say, is that, you know, it's pretty bad out there, and it's going to go on for another year or so. And there's so many people, not just the street clients, but institutions, organizations, old folk homes, orphanages and so on that are needing food, and there is a big need for the food. So 101 Jalan Tun HS Lee, just don't drop by there with a van full of goods so that they're not prepared to take it. I think Joyce has got enough stress, and so just pre-warn her. Yeah, look at that.
I got enough white hair, thank you.
Yeah, so just it's very simple. Pit Stop Community Cafe on Facebook. Go in there and send her a PM, and within a day she'll reply you and tell you what they need, what is welcome, when you can drop it.
Yes.
You know, it's time while we are out there shopping for Christmas presents and looking at what we like out there in the shop, just spare a thought for these people who need food and other things that will keep them going.
Or even online shopping. If they like online shopping, go online shopping first. We're good.
Send the delivery over to you and give a notification to Joycelyn. Yeah, that's a good idea. If you don't have the time to go out there and buy and drop it off, just go to Tesco or any of the delivery of grocers that are delivering and just order your food and go. But don't simply buy and drop anything and send anything you want. Send things that...
Well, you know, if they're going to send us, say, smoked salmon, right? A couple of kilos of smoked. I'm not going to say no.
I'll come and join you and help to, you know, prepare the sauce.
Must QC. Then we have to QC the quality control.
That's right. Yeah, no, we're just kidding.
Or a leg of lamb, you know, a couple of turkeys. Yes, it's all good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one I don't mind.
Okay. Thank you, Joyce, for joining us, taking time out of your busy schedule. And for you, Joyce, I know your very simple treat is a sardine curry and a liver perotel and cabbage and rasam.
Don't forget the rasam, yes.
Yes, the rasam. Once I cook without the rasam and she complained. So that will be waiting for you, Joyce, when this busy period's over. Just say when. It will be prepared. And for a change, instead of feeding people, come over to my home and be fed. You've been listening. Most welcome. You've been listening to Sheila Singham speaking to Joycelyn Lee, co-founder of Pit Stop Community Cafe on the Sheila Exchange. For all of you who are celebrating Christmas, we will not be having a segment next week. It's Christmas. Give me a break. Blessed Christmas to everybody, and have a great year-end celebration. Sparing a thought for those in need. Thank you, everybody.